Good morning. Welcome to the Ocean of Sound Summit. We have with us today Dr. Brian McPherson. Welcome, Brian.
Good morning.
Brian, Dr. McPherson, got his Ph.D. in psychology from Tufts University in 1995. He studied Sufism with Pir Vilayat Inayat Khan, the Sufi Order International, now the Inayati Order. He studied yoga with Amrit Desai, founder of Kripalu Yoga Center. He studied yoga with Dr. Vijagendra Pratap, founder of Yoga Research Society. He's published a dozen articles in various scientific journals. He's presented research finding at over a dozen scientific conferences, including the International Sound Colloquium. He's published a book called Sufi Mindfulness Yoga, work that uses mindfulness practices to connect specific Sufi practices to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And he has put together an amazing body of work. We're very, very excited to have this conversation with Brian today. I want to introduce also my co-host, Amany Shalaby. Amany has her master's in a comparative philosophy of religions. She has her postgraduate degree in Islamic studies and Sufism. She did her thesis on Ibn Arabi. She served as a translator for my spiritual teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Al-Jamal Al-Rafai Shadali, for the last 12 years of his life. She is a founder of Universal Chaplaincy. I got my chaplaincy degree certification under her Universal Chaplaincy program. And she is my co-teacher in the Ocean of Sound. Welcome, Amany.
Thank you, Mastura. It's a pleasure to have you, Brian, in this interview. And we're very excited to know, what attracted you to study Sufism, particularly the beautiful names of Allah, and how did you connect it to the yoga practice?
I first was interested in yoga. I got through my wife. My wife started studying yoga, and she asked me to come along, and I sort of was reluctant at first to go, but after my first visit to the Kripalu ashram with Amrit Desai, I was really taken away by the chanting and the use of the sounds of chanting, and that was what got me interested in understanding how sounds can affect your body and how they can produce this emotional feelings through the sounds. With that, I was studying on my own the sounds, and I had a spiritual experience I would call a vision. I was, after a session of just trying to understand sounds, I leaned back and closed my eyes, and instead of just relaxing, I was transported into a field and saw in the distance in this field 3 people sitting around something that I didn't recognize. And it turned out these 3 people were Sufis, or they were dressed in, I identified them as, not at that moment as Sufis, but somebody maybe Middle Eastern dressed. And what they were studying looked to be an object that looked like a roulette wheel, which is a gambling device. But when I got closer, I saw instead of a roulette wheel, it was a beautiful crystal. And I got, my consciousness went toward this object and was engulfed in this beautiful crystal, and it became just an overwhelming feeling of love and joy. So that was a very uplifting spiritual experience. I didn't understand what it was about until later that evening. My wife brought home a book, and the book was written by Pir Vilayat Inayat Khan. And I opened the book's page and I see this face, and then I say, oh, that was the Sufi I saw in my vision. And the book was all about how to use sounds and how they connected to the body. And that was where I first got into studying the sounds. Eventually, I went to the Sufi community where Pir Vilayat was the leader, and got a chance to study with him. And so that was what triggered my long search for the meaning of sounds. That was just the beginning, though. I spent a lot more time, but I think that answers the question about the initial foray into sounds.
Now, Brian, your PhD is actually in the relationship of sound to emotions in the body. Is that correct?
Well, when I went that was my intention to study at Tufts, to study sounds. I was drawn or led to a particular advisor at Tufts, and his work was electrophysiology. And so that was involved putting electrodes on people's heads and reading what we call brain waves, or EEG. I wanted to study how people reacted to sounds. And whenever I told the person who I was led to, he was like, well, there's not much been done in that, and here's what has been done. And he was not very encouraging for me to pursue that particular line. So I instead studied language, which was what he was more, that was his field, language. Languages, our sounds are part of language, and I thought that would fit. But I ended up doing my dissertation on reading disabilities and how people with reading disabilities have trouble processing the sounds. And so I did research that had compared normal readers to people with reading disability, and they had to listen to the words that rhymed and words that didn't rhyme and make certain decisions. And that was what I could find, that people with reading disabilities, at least a subset of people with reading disabilities, had this problem, phonological processing problem. So it's tangentially related to what I really wanted to study, but I had to be practical, and I wanted to get the credentials of a PhD, and then later on I was able to do more specific study of the sound. So initially it was more kind of a side avenue. So
later you did specific studies then about the effect of sound on the human emotion and body? Yes.
That I was able to do a study that that showed that people, when they heard a particular sound, it activated certain areas of emotional memory, and it's rather detailed process to explain. But I can give you a sort of a brief example. For example, the vowel sound of ah. That ah sound is, in some research has shown that it has a connection to relaxation, or a feeling of being relaxed. And you can think of this if somebody would give you a massage, maybe you would say, ah, that feels so good, ah. And so that's the idea. So the study I did looked at various other sounds, but ah was one of the primary sounds that it looked at. That there was in the psychological literature, there's something called lexical decisions, which people are told they have to identify whether the letter string is a word or it's just a non-word. It's not a real word. And it gets a little complicated here, but some of the words that they had to identify had the connotation of relaxation, and other words had no connection to relaxation. So when people heard the sound ah before a word that had relaxation, they were able to identify that word faster and more accurately than if it was a word that had no connection to relaxation. So that was just one part of it, but there were, they used similar kinds of reasoning to come up with the study that shows certain sounds have connections. And I used there are 6 different primary sounds, and ah being one of them. And each of the primary sounds has a particular connection to a part of an emotion dimension. And so in the literature of psychology, it's been identified that there are three dimensions of emotions: a relaxation dimension, or how aroused or how relaxed the emotion is. Some emotions are very relaxed, some are very aroused. Other emotions are how pleasant or unpleasant they are. Some emotions are very pleasant. Happiness, joy are very pleasant. Other emotions are not pleasant: sadness and anger. And then third dimension of emotion is how much you feel in control, or how much are you controlling it, or how much something outside of you is controlling it. So that's internal versus external control. And so there are different ways of looking at these, but each of these 3 dimensions of emotions has a particular sound that resonates most with it. So as I already told you, relaxation resonates with the sound ah. The arousal, the other extreme of if you're looking at the dimension of relaxation, the other extreme is arousal or agitation, and the sound that connects to that would be an R sound, or if somebody would be angry, or a growling type sound, kind of how the one connected with that. With the idea of how pleasant or unpleasant an emotion is, the sound of M sound, or with your lips closed and making a sound through the nasal passage, is connected to a pleasantness. So if you're thinking of, that's something that tastes good, and then it's pleasant, you might say, that's good. And then the opposite extreme of being pleasant. The opposite extreme of pleasantness would be something that's not very pleasant, or something that's kind of disgusting or unpleasant. And that would be ooh, that's not very nice. Ooh, yes, you might see a bug or a spider or something and go, ooh.
This is a cross culture?
This is cross culture. This has been looked at in, I don't know how many cultures I can identify. I haven't done it myself, but I've seen some literature in German, at least, supporting this. I would hope, I know that one of the main ways that people look at emotions is through facial expressions. And facial expressions have been found to be congruent across cultures. And it's been studied by various people in various cultures to show that, the raising of the eyebrows for surprise, and the smile for happiness, and the frowns for sadness, that's universal across cultures. And so my reasoning of sounds is that you're actually doing something kind of a facial expression. If you purse your lips, ooh, that's a facial expression. To make that the ooh sound, there is some sort of a facial expression there. So if just carrying the logic of facial expressions in general are cross-cultural, then I think it fits with sounds. Although I haven't been able to do cross-cultural studies, it would be something that would be worthwhile to pursue.
Definitely.
I wonder, when those studies are done, is it just like, is there any inflection in the tones of the sounds, like ooh versus ooh? You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you look at it, it changes facial expression when you change the inflection, and it also changes the meaning.
Excellent question there. Yes, the modulation of the voice has been studied, and it is known that also affects emotion. So whenever I had people recording these sounds for my studies, I had to give them the instructions of don't keep your intonation even, and don't use inflections, because of that confound that the inflections could create. So the ooh, that they had to do it in, I had to say, this has to be neutral. You have to just make the sound without an inflection if you can. I mean, so that's the trick of doing it. Yeah.
That's a fascinating study, and I wonder if you have like the application part of it that I assume you integrated in your yoga practice, but also as a psychologist with clients, have you been able to apply the sound to help them?
Well, that's unfortunately my degree in psychology is not a clinical psychologist, so I'm not qualified to be a clinician and have individual patients. My degree was in what they call experimental psychology, and the people that I studied were all clinical populations, but they were being seen by physicians or other psychologists, and not by myself. I had to come up with, do the paperwork to be able to study these people. I mean, there's a whole process of meeting requirements that you're not going to harm these people, and written consent and all that kind of thing. But yes, I did not study them or try to treat them myself. I mean, I studied them, but not trying to treat them.
Yeah, your passion is in trying to understand just across the board how we work, basically, right? How we work with sound, with vibes, if you will, vibrations. I mean, I don't know if you get into that language at all, but I do.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, I was not trying to treat people, just trying to understand the sounds themselves.
But with your own practice, you did feel the effect on yourself.
Right.
You integrated the sounds.
And that's what I wrote about in my book, how I use these practices, how I perceive these, and what I think could be useful. And I give the caveat that everybody should just try them and see what works for them, and not just take my word for it, but give it your own evaluation. So most of what I say and write about in the book is this is hopefully something you can use for spiritual growth. And
what is the name of your book?
Sufi Mindfulness Yoga. What I studied first was yoga, and I learned through Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which are written first put down in words by Patanjali in the 3rd century of this current era, but are considered sacred books by Hindu folks, and there within that there's it's quite a fascinating structure of understanding psychology, and it has been the Yoga Sutras have been studied by various Sufi masters, and there's been a lot of commentary written by Sufi masters on the Yoga Sutras.
So I know you have some YouTube videos as well, and you actually you teach some practices with Sufi mindfulness yoga. In
those videos, that's what I have created. Yes, so far I've only put 6 of them. Created 6 of them. I have a lot more ideas. I've just been stalled for, I don't know, whatever reason. But the practices I've put out are, the ones I put out, the first 3 I put out were talking about how to quell the various, what in the Yoga Sutras, not the Sufis, but the Yoga Sutras call the modifications of the mind, and the Sufis would call the nafs. The processes that keep your mind agitated and all the time churning, perhaps needlessly, sometimes usefully, but a lot of times it's just chatter in your mind that is going on. And so I've identified several Sufi, or actually names of Allah, that you can use in helping you overcome if you get stuck in some of these nafs that are constantly bugging you. For example, if your mind is thinking about, how do I solve this? How am I going to do this? That kind of thing. Or am I doing this right? How can I work on this? That's where I find the word salam can be very helpful. The getting rid of that nagging kind of self-doubting. And of course the word salam has the meaning in English of peace, which makes a lot of sense if you think about let your mind become at peace. And that's, and there's a way I can go through the process of how that works if you'd like.
Awesome.
Please do. Yes.
Yeah. So the different sounds have different connotations. The S sound, the S sort of it's a very white noise kind of thing. It's a churning of of your trying to be in control. If you remember, I said one of the 3 dimensions of emotions is control, and it can be internal or external. And if you're trying to make yourself internally be in control of the situation, the sound that most connects to that is the S sound. That's sort of your control wheels are burnt or turning, and it's like a white noise. It's just that mental energy keeps foaming kind of thing. So the first step in taking control of that is to move that to letting go, and that is the purpose of the L sound in salam. So let that, and both of them use the tongue. The S for the tongue, the S sound, the tongue is just letting a little bit of air come out. It's creating friction by closing the gap and making your vocal tract very tiny space. So you're trying to control a whole lot with your tongue there. And if you realize the L sound, that lets your tongue drop down and lets the air flow through there. So you're letting go of that control with the L sound. And then the salam, that you relax, let go, relax, and then let that M come in, salam. So salam, that takes your mental energy, of the S, lets go into the L and relaxes with the and then you end up with feeling this pleasantness. So that's the process that would work. That's how I perceive it, how I would analyze it.
Fascinating.
Can we take a minute with that? I'm sorry,
practice. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking for the people that are listening, like, can we have an experience? Like, just take a moment and I'm sure that maybe I'm the only one who has chatter going in the mind, but just in case anybody else who's watching this right now has chatter in their mind, maybe we can just like do a little, can you lead us on a little practice, Brian?
Sure. Let's just, and we, a lot of times we use as a lead in, salam, and then ya salam, and those, the Sufis use that because the is just identifying, and then the ya is like sort of a supplication or bring in a request to bring in this, the ya. There we go. So if we just relax for a second, I'll start here and say, As-salam, Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Salam. So hopefully that can be useful. You can allow your mind to relax and stop your worrying or fretting over something that you're trying to figure out with your mind. It's not something you would perhaps use if your emotion is not associated with trying to control something. If you're upset with something that's more of, this feels bad to me, then that's not going to be as useful. But if it's just a mental issue of your mind, you want your mind to slow down and not be so caught up in trying to figure something out, then I think salam is excellent.
I think maybe also by, maybe the ancient language has that ability to also prolong the letters, slow down, and when you say salam, you can prolong the relaxation kind. So that's what Mastura was referring to, the tone of the voice and how you are present with it and say it slowly. All of this has effect. And how about the posture of the body, how the person is sitting, or like that also has effect?
I'm sure it does. Yes, I try to, when I do my practices, I try to sit erectly. I used to sit on the floor. I can't do that anymore. My knees are have gotten to the point where that doesn't work, but I try to sit with just an erect position with my back straight. That seems to be the most beneficial to me. But yeah, I think if that's something that you can't attain or not as easily, and you need some kind of support or other position, it still can be useful.
Effective, yeah.
Kind of from the perspective of everything affects everything else. I know in just doing that short little practice that we did, I felt just all kinds of tension releasing from my face and my jaw, from my shoulders. I actually felt my face and facial expressions changing, and I felt my shoulders dropping. So I felt my body posture, body language shifting as we were introducing those sounds and invoking the peace, the sounds that, invoke the divine name of peace. So I guess that goes to the effect the sound has on the body, the way the body responds, and how the body language, the facial expressions, and the posture changes when the sound is invoked. Is that a part of your study as well?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, but I haven't been able to get to that level of detail on it.
Yeah.
So you spoke about the external and the internal effect of sound. Does this mean if someone recites the beautiful name of Allah on someone else, will have similar effect if the person themselves said it? Like
You mean saying it versus
coming
hearing
from
it?
within versus hearing it, someone reciting it to you from the outside. What is your understanding?
It's
Well,
kind of singing
I can only
versus
speculate
listening.
because I have.
Yes.
I think I can speculate, but I haven't been able to do that study. But
Judge it.
it would be worth doing. But I think the ones that there has been some one study that I can remember that look at just one particular sound, and that was the oo sound, and even just listening to that created a feeling of uncomfortableness or displeasure or unpleasantness to people that heard that oo sound. And so that's it's only a small part, but only one study. I didn't do that study myself, but I was able to read that study in the literature. And so it makes sense that other sounds would also follow through like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's tapping into an infinite integrated well of, like, drops of ocean, right? As poet Rumi says, we're not a drop in the ocean, we're the ocean in a drop. And it just, like, everything's so interrelated and everything affects everything else. And you're like, tapping into this huge ocean. Is there any, like, one thing in your research that was like something that really, like, sparks your passion, or your something you found most fascinating?
Not identifying anything that happened in an instantaneous way, but at some point it just struck me that all that I've studied and all that I've found, it fits together in such a beautiful way that at some point I was like, this is so much beyond me just making something up. This is just such a beautiful existence that it was just something I really can't put into words, but the feeling of all the beauty that I've seen and found in this, it's just overwhelming almost.
It is. So you said that you also started with yoga, and I know some people do yoga meditation in silence and some add chanting. Would you say that when someone meditate or do the Sufi dhikr audibly is more effective than sitting in silence?
I don't know. My practices are mostly in silence now, but when I'm in a group, I find that's when we do the speaking out loud, it's more powerful than sitting together in silence. So, but sometimes I do words out loud in my practices, but those are ones that when I'm just feel there's something that it feels like it has to be said. That just sort of comes out. But other times I'm focusing on a particular name of Allah and how those sounds, I can feel those sounds maybe internally rather than actually having to say them. And that's where I think that came a lot when I was in grad school up in Boston. I had a night job of teaching computer science in Central Square. I don't know if you know anything about the subway system, but anyhow, I had to take the subway. Driving was that was not really much fun, so I usually took the subway. And while I was there, I carried with me a little book of the 99 names all the time, and I would go through them. And it's sitting in the subway, you don't want to be saying things out loud. I mean, so I had a practice of saying them internally, and that's where that's sort of how
the same vibration.
I became familiar with the 99 names. I learned them and had them all inside of me through that process. And so I don't know if that's influenced me later on why I still do things silently, but I know some other Sufis have written that they practice their sounds internally instead of out loud. So
I do. Well, I try to play with both, but I know I tend to, when I'm really going into the deep places, then it becomes a silent, almost more of an intention for the waves to move through, and the resonance to become an inner resonance.
I found that when I can't focus, I use the audible. If I am focused and attuned, then I can just say them silently.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So did your study of sound help you understand the beautiful names of Allah and the deep meaning of them?
Yes. I mean that. My quest to understand it just every time I would get an insight or found something in the literature that was pertinent, and then did some work on my own to verify or to support that, I would then apply that to my practices of the names, which I had been continually doing the practices, and it would be like a light bulb would go on at many of these times. Like, oh, so that's what that was. My at first understanding of the names would be then expanded into, oh yes, that's why this is. So it was, my realizations sort of went together with my study of the names.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of an organic process.
Brian, when we were first introduced, I know your undergrad is in mathematics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, as is mine. And Amany is in engineering, right? What kind of engineering, Amany?
Electronic engineering, which you have to be good at math also.
Yes.
Algebra.
Right.
Yes. And I also recognize that, some other people that I know that went into physics and then were drawn to linguistics. And one of the things, the mathematics and physics is like, understanding the geometric structure of the universe, the structure of the universe. And then there is sound in terms of the, emanation of vibration from source, right? Everything is energy, everything is wave, everything, moves, everything is energy and motion. And we have this geometric and physical structure of the universe. And I'm just really fascinated with the number of people that I'm meeting lately who started in math and physics and then ended up with really wanting to understand sound. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed any connection, there's a part of me that's really just personally wanting to explore that connection more deeply. And I mean, I believe it all helps us to understand the structure of the universe, creation, emanation of creation and consciousness from source. I personally am wanting to understand and explore that more. Have you noticed anything in your work or in your personal life that kind of connects any of the dots there?
I don't know. I think the observation is a good one, that people with, I guess it just sort of speaks to the fact that inquiring minds that are very analytical eventually are going to get focused on the self, and what is that, and how does that connect to everything? Because ultimately, I mean, from a philosophical point of view, that's what we are. I mean, we're connected to everything, and we want to understand that and experience that. And so I don't have any, I can't point to any research that shows how a math background would sort of lead to that, but it does make a lot of sense. And I'm fascinated to understand that that's our common.
Yeah, I guess it will be interesting because I don't know about the yoga practice that much, but in Islamic Sufism, like we are told to recite, for example, certain phrases, sacred phrases 33 times. So sometimes that makes me wonder, and I wonder if, because you said in your research, you made people repeat a certain sound, like oo sound or ah sound, in a certain number or certain period of time, or that was not in the research, like an aspect of the research?
I did not in my research, but I can say that with the yoga groups, particularly the Yoga Research Society, which is where I spent a lot more time originally anyhow, they also have of practices.
Number
33 times is a common, like, if we're going to do this, and it's 33 is often the number that's chosen. Wow.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. It seems like maybe for the sound to have its maximum effect or full effect, it needs to be repeated, because I guess the mind repeats things. So to break out of its repetition circuit, it has to be a certain number of times. It's a guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they come up with those numbers, but it does seem to be something that is
related.
So, the impact on like using these practices for our daily lives, for, you know, like bringing it into the, you know, from the theoretical into the daily life practice. What do you find is the biggest impact for people?
I think it's all dependent upon where the individual is and what their aims are, and what, you know, what kind of hang-ups they might have, or it's certain. You can use the sounds to enhance a spiritual experience or feeling of connection to Allah, or you can use the sounds to help you get over certain emotional issues you're having, or even you can help you deal with physical problems better. Not trying to solve those physical problems, but have your outlook on them perhaps changed. And maybe one of the bigger ones is helping to reduce stress, because in our society, stress is such a big thing that we can find the use of these sounds, I think, are very helpful in that way. So it depends. For me right now, I use the sounds for the names in a couple of basic ways. It used to be focusing mostly on just trying to get a deep meditation and feeling a connection to Allah, or, you know, the presence of the universe being part of that whole. And now, as I'm older, I'm finding I use it to address certain physical issues and try to make me not let them absorb me, and try to let them be as they are, but not let them take over, and that kind of way.
Yes, which is huge.
And I also use it just as a connection, as a feeling of gratitude, or feeling of letting the feeling of the goodness that can be a blessing to you, to let that feeling come in. Let your feeling like, oh, I feel blessed to be alive and to be part of this, that kind of thing. So that's, several different avenues that I use currently.
So earlier you used with us, or you told us, sorry, about how you had this spiritual experience or vision, and so you think that these invocations of the beautiful names of Allah and the sound, how it can open for us to see these visions and receive inspirations that can help guide our life?
I think it's certainly a possibility that if we're able to tune ourselves with these names, I think that can lead us to, and can guide us. There are certainly various sounds, Rashid being one of the ones that I'm aware of that can help that way. But there are other ones as well that
Can you get the translation of Rashid for people who don't know?
It's a guide, it's a rationality. It has to do with the highest rationality, and to reach intellectual and spiritual maturity, I would call. So that is based on how it is used in Arabic.
I think of Rashid as like a teacher also.
Yeah, I think my point that it is not only a tool of relaxation, because people can say, I can relax by something else. There are a lot of things that can produce relaxation, but I feel these practices open more than just a state of relaxation. It can open for the person to work with their psychological issues, or find the inspiration or a vision that informs their daily life, right?
Yes. For me, it's the spiritual aspect of it is what I think you're referring to, rather than just the physical benefit. I mean, there are physical benefits, but that's not where it ends. I mean, it's the goal, or the true end would be the spiritual connection.
Mm-hmm.
Physical, emotional, spiritual. And Brian, I apologize. I interrupted you when you were going to speak about using the name Rashid. So would you like to complete that thought?
Yeah. If you're working towards something and you want to try to put your best effort forward, the physical, you have this energy and you want to apply your energy, and you want to you're not sure where this energy should go. Perhaps that's where the Rashid, I think, is useful. The energy that you have can be expressed as an R with the R sound. So this R, ra, Rashid, this is the SH sound in English. SH sound is sh, and that's it's not the same as the S sound. The tongue slips back for the SH sound, so it's more of control. The S sound itself is just your mind going on, but the SH sound is sort of your mind connecting to the physical. So you're trying to deal with what to do in this physical world with the SH sound. And so this energy you apply R, the SH, E is the E sound is letting go, and this is where why I use the word guide here, because we want to be guided by Allah, or the power that we have our connection to. That's the E sound. Outside control. We want to let go and let this outside control give us direction, and that's where how I perceive guide in this. And if we can take this energy that we have, this R energy, and sort of use the SH and then E, let this, our control of the environment, be guided for this outside force, and end it with a D, and then that D is, we use the tongue for the D, da, and it's a stop consonant. It's the D. When we say a D, it temporarily stops the airflow, and it's actually a voice stop consonant. So D and T are both articulated with the tongue behind the teeth. Da.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is the D sound you're holding on to. You actually vibrate your vocal cords before you release the air, before the stop is taken away. For the ta, you release the air before the vocal cords vibrate. And so there's a subtle difference there, that the D is more, you're holding on to this, this D, this articulation. And with the tip of the tongue, that is self-control. And that's sort of, that sums it up probably too glibly, but for one of saving time, we end with this D, with this gives us our control that we're looking for. And it's a paradox that we can cede our control to Allah, or the outside E, with the E, we're letting go to this power that we're going to have faith in, and that lets us have the control we need. So that's a paradox that's used in actually several of the names of Allah. The E followed by a D, or the E followed by another control kind of sound. But Rashid is a prime example of that, I think. So it's kind of, it's more complicated than the salam explanation. But anyhow, I can give, let me just give one more. I think that's a little
great.
bit.
I find this fascinating, actually.
A little bit easier to understand would be Rahim. And because it also has the E sound in it, and it has that R sound at the beginning. So Rahim, I would recommend Rahim to use it to relieve stress. It's a good way to release stress. If you're dealing with the world, the stress builds up. They have this this kind of energy, physical energy that isn't hitting your nervous system, and it's not really mental that much as it is physical. It's just you're all keyed up. If you sit through traffic, or that's a prime example for me, is having to deal with traffic. That can get you all sort of riled up. So that R, and Rahim uses Rahim and Rahman both use this, the H, which the guttural H, not the English H, but the Arabic H, rah, rah. So with the effect that has with that sound is sort of like exhaust out or flush out this R sound, rah, rah, rahim, rahim, rahim. And the E coming in is we want to get rid of this stress and let the E sound, which is this external control that we're hoping to be of this beneficial external control, this merciful external control that we can tap into, as most Sufis identify this external control as being from Allah. And that E then allows this M to come in for the ending Rahim. So it's Rahim, Rahim, Rahim.
Which the M is about the pleasure. That
gives you this pleasant feeling, gets rid of this stress, and by letting this outside control give us this feeling of this pleasant feeling. So I really find Rahim very useful in that for situations of stress release where we want to just let go and bask in the power that Allah will allow come to us.
Yeah, beautiful. And the Rahim and Rahman are the mercy and compassion.
Yes, Rahman differs slightly because here you're ending with an M sound, which if you understand that the way you articulate an M is with the tongue again, and the tongue blocks the airflow completely. With an N, the air has to come through the nose, but it's similar to the M in that the air comes through the nose, but you're not using your lips, you're using your tongue. And articulators, the lips modulate the pleasant unpleasantness. I mean, the way to think of this, when a child is nursing, the only sound it can make is an sound, and this is very pleasant, I'm sure, for the child. And if the child is searching for the mother's breast, the lips are pursed, and ooh, they're not getting what they want. So the lips modulate, and the B, which is also with the lips, and the P, they both modulate this pleasantness dimension in a slightly different way because of there being stop consonants. But the N sound, we're using the tongue, and the tongue modulates with all these sounds like the S sound, the T, the D, and the K, G. All those sounds are used. We use the tongue, and they all modulate control in some way. How we're controlling our thoughts, how we're controlling the physical environment. All these things, all those things are modulated through the tongue. And the biggest or strongest control we can do is just block the airflow entirely, and that's the N sound that we get then. And so with the N, that is how we express our strongest control. And we use an example where you can see it in English that we use the N sound with no when we're talking to our toddler. And that's when we want to control that child, it's the no. The N sound is exemplar of very much control. But so in Rahman, you want to get control. So the difference between Rahim and Rahim, you're asking for Allah's mercy to come down. Rahman, you want Allah, you want to be in control. So if you're, an example for Rahman is you have this nervous energy or this something going on, you're maybe agitated, you're upset, but you need to have control of the situation, then Rahman will add the ah, and it relaxes, the N gives you control. So Rahman puts you in control with, instead of feeling like you're upset and going to bite somebody's head off or be do something aggressive because of you're agitated. Rahman can calm you down and give you control, whereas Rahim, on the other hand, actually lets you let go and have outside control through Allah to just let you feel pleasant. So there's a big difference in Rahman, Rahim, but they both start out with trying to get rid of this energy that you're dealing with, and which one you want to use depends on how you want to resolve this situation.
It is because energy, as they say, it can't be destroyed. It can only be transformed into something else. So from my studies and reading, the R sound understood in Arabic as a repetition or recycling. So it's almost like you're recycling and aroused unpleasant energy in you and transforming it to something else more pleasant, more peaceful, more insightful, and so forth. And as you are mentioning about the the babies and how, the first sense, actually, I think, to my knowledge, that the baby forms, or even while being an embryo, is the sense of hearing. So sound is really important, and it is said if the mother listens to sacred recitation of the Quran, for example, or relaxing music or things like that, it will affect the baby rather than noise and fighting and quarreling. And then the first or the second then sense is the tasting, because that is the first thing that connects the baby to the mother, to the unity, to the nourishment, and so forth. So it just reminded me of how the Sufis say tasting, like when they describe a spiritual experience, which always perplexed me. It's almost when you're talking, all of a sudden it became clear. Like they describe spiritual experience as dhawq, as tasting, because it is kind of connected to how the tongue, pronounce some letters, and it gives us the pleasant or the inner peace, or the pleasant kind of emotion we have when we were in unity, just as when we were embryo in unity with the mother. It seems like everything is connected that way.
Nice, yes.
Yeah. And also, I really like the discussion about, the position of the tongue, the stop, where the energy is held, or where the sound is held, and that, because it seems like, it's an expression of something very basic, instinctual, that is just natural, as opposed to learned, and something that we are taught and learn. So it's like, as you're saying that, I'm feeling how sound connects us with our basic natural instincts that are like found beyond the learned mind.
Yes, yes, and very, very much. Sounds are intrinsic to our being, and we don't have to think about them; we just experience them. I mean, it's a very big contrast to language, which is we do think about what we say, or hopefully we do, most of us, and it's why if you talk to the leading linguists in the country, which I've had an opportunity to do that, they're not very open to the idea that a sound has an intrinsic value, and I've it's very frustrating to from my viewpoint of trying to get my research into an academic setting, because of the establishment, and particularly the in this country, it's the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, has the leading voices in linguistics, and they're very, and Tufts, where I went, was close enough that I've been down to the MIT campus a couple times and spoken with some of these leading linguists, and they're just very dismissive of the ideas that I was trying to present, and so it's very discouraging that way. But
interesting, because how much our thoughts affects us, and our thoughts are kind of inner voice. It's inner vibration, also inner sounds in a way, and that also makes me think of the people who, for example, are deaf, but they can still receive that vibration in a subtle way, and from inside themselves as thoughts. So, like, it should make the scientist aware that sounds are also connected to thoughts, and thoughts connected to our psychology, which is connecting to our well-being. So it's unfortunate that they think that way.
Yeah. And also with the more and more study of trauma and the effects of trauma on the brain and the body, whereas just experientially speaking, that a person can like lose their voice or stifle their voice, when they've experienced a trauma, especially a severe, catastrophic kind of trauma, then the voice closes up, but you can help to connect with what is it that you're feeling and experiencing just by starting to play with those very introductory, base sounds of or or just to like try to connect with what's really happening inside during this time, so that you can begin to start to trust your voice and trust your body again. and connect with your body. I know that's, one of the practices for treating trauma now. So maybe there will be new opening, Brian. And I'm feeling like we need to just start our own academy, because what Amany and I are learning through this series of interviews that we're doing, and, in the Ocean of Sound that we're facilitating, the program that we're facilitating, is just, there's so much there that goes beyond the knowledge that has been agreed upon in our mainstream, cultural studies, that is so valuable for our human experience, our emotional experience, our mental experience, and our spiritual experience of, what this world is about, why we're here, and what we are here to be and to do and to realize in our human lives. So I think we just need to do our own.
Well, good. Yeah, I'm very happy to find like-minded people in this area, because I haven't. There's so few of people that I've been able to connect to in this way. I mean, I without the Sufis, the group that I connect to most here is Unitarian Universalists, which are very open to all viewpoints. But when I talk with them about sounds, they mostly scratch their heads. They're not. It's like they're not very experienced with those kind of ways of trying to connect.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like, I remember myself, I was a skeptic in the past. So it's like one phase, or something clicks and it opens a person interest. So everyone, where they are and what is helpful to them at the point. But there are many people now interested in sounds, and I've been also trying to find research and read about it, and it's great to connect with you, and looking forward to read your book more in details to understand. So yeah, thank you for all the efforts you're putting in that topic. It's important.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to thank you also. And I guess this, just a final note, I just want to say this, because I know as a student, when I was studying in advanced mathematics classes, I was really having a spiritual experience that at the time I didn't have words for or any context for it. And I tried to express it, and I got really hard shut down by academia in a way that was, kind of damaging and set me back spiritually for a while. And then embarking on the spiritual path, and through this path that I've been on now for the last 25 plus years, it's coming full circle, and I'm recognizing the context of the experience I was having in earlier days. But I just want to say, for people who are out there, and especially young people in academia, or people who have had those kind of experience, and for teachers in academia too, you never know how we can bring about new avenues of understanding for each other, and to not ever dismiss or shut things down. Because I think that there's been a lot of that's happened. I've talked to other people who have had similar experiences. And Brian, it sounds like by being in the academia, that it's difficult to find the openings, because there can be some rigidity there. And yet those are the places that we turn to when we want to do research, which research is meant to open up new avenues, right? And so just a word, a note, a prayer that we can have some more openness and receptivity and a sense of exploration there. And then with that said, Brian, I'd like to ask you as a final question, is there any advice that you have for anybody who wants to learn more about this kind of study that you have been exploring, and the work that you do?
Well, certainly they can check my website out. It's Sufi Mindfulness Yoga, or would probably get you there. It's also, the URL is www.holisticemotivepractices.com. Yeah. But so that gives you a link to start exploring that. I'm open to people who have questions, who want to make email contact with me, which you can get via that website. So yeah, that's from my endpoint. That would be ways to do it. I have some YouTube videos that can get you some information, maybe a little more easily accessible than the website. Or finally, there's the book, which you've mentioned, there's a link on my website. That's Sufi Mindfulness Yoga. That goes very much into detail of all this work. It's the most in detail aspect that if you get interested in it, that would be where you would go. And if I could ask both of you, if you know people that would be interested, and you talk with people, and if you bring up my name, feel free to give them my contact information. I'd be happy to talk to more people who are likewise trying to figure things out in this area, and trying to use the names of Allah and understand them and apply them in a way that makes sense and makes good use of them and enhances people's lives through them. So that's really, if I can get more connected to people directly, that would be great. I mean, having people look at my work, that's fine too, but personal connections, I really think are excellent.
Beautiful.
I appreciate you reaching out to me, and appreciate all your interest in my work. Thank you.
It will be our pleasure, Brian, to let people be in contact with you who are interested to learn more about that. And just want to thank you very much for the valuable knowledge you shared with us, and for the time you spent with us in this interview.
You're quite welcome.
Yes, thank you. And just, do you want connection with the yoga community also, for like kind of, it seems like you have a nice comprehensive bridge there.
Well, yeah, I do have connections with the Yoga Research Society. I mean, I periodically participate in events that they hold. They're located in Philadelphia, so I still have that connection, and they're familiar with my work to some degree. Some of them have read it more than others, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Beautiful. I just think of that it's all one, right? It's all connected. It's all one, and that there is a commonality. If we stick with things long enough, we find the commonality.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brian. We look for, and for viewers, listeners, look in the comments here for all of the links to Brian's website and YouTube and his book. Thank you so much.